Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Reanimated. This is the 94th episode of our Fair Zombie podcast. My name is Stuart Tiffin, and I am being joined by H.A. Conrad. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Super duper. Thank you. Welcome to this podcast, everybody. We're going to be reviewing Pride and Prejudice and Zombies today, one of our rare reviewing the thing shortly after it comes out editions.
Indeed.
Usually we are much more archival in our approach to reviews, to put it gently. Anyway, this episode is going to be brought to you by Squarespace. It is the all-in-one platform, making it easy to create your own website. If you have a small business or just a hobby that you want to have a website for, Squarespace is that platform you want to build your website on. They've got 24-hour support. You can get a free domain if you sign up for a year. And you can sign up without even using a credit card. It's pretty badass. And they have an offer code for our podcast. You enter the word zombie, not case sensitive, when you go to checkout for the first time, and you'll get 10% off. And that's pretty great.
Yep. Build it beautiful. That's their tagline.
Oh, yeah. I think it's actually also you should. I'm not sure about
Sure.
that one. Maybe, it might be.
My friend Craig actually is featured in one of their ads. The one where they burn up everything. They burn up font. And he's a typographer, so it's him burning it up.
Oh,
Yeah,
delightful.
it's pretty cool.
New York, man. Small world.
I know.
So hello, welcome, news. What do we got? Oh yeah, my Facebook feed the last few weeks, I've been seeing more ads for water-based survival gear. And so we've already talked about this one before, but I think they have a new video out, and it honestly, it's like a super cool gadget. And I think the first time we talked about it, there was no solar panel element to it, or I don't recall talking about taking it off the bike. But so this is called Fontus.
Yeah, I don't remember that there was a solar panel before, or maybe they didn't mention it.
Maybe, yeah, just the materials weren't super in depth. But now the video basically shows you at least what it's supposed to do. It both picks up water as you're riding your bike. If you attach this with a filter system under the frame of your bicycle, and you ride it on a what they say is like a hot, humid day between 80 and 100 degrees.
That does sound like fun.
Yeah, 80 or higher humidity, like horrible day to be outside, in my opinion. But, you know, these are the conditions where your water bottle will fill up the fastest because it's just scooping it right out of the atmosphere.
All right, but
so
you
it
might
will
lose more water than you gain.
Maybe, yeah. The bottle in the video on the bike definitely never looks full. It's always just like, okay, here's like a thimble of water to make up for everything you've lost. I think really the selling point is perhaps more when you take it off your bike and use the built-in solar panel and plug it in, and it basically sucks the water right out of the air, filling it up in about, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure the time frame was not clear, but I would say about an hour. But super cool idea. It's probably still pretty early adopter stuff, but I'd be all over it.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great idea. And just from a survival outdoors point of view, I think it's a great thing to have.
Also in the news, we've got and this has been pretty far widespread, at least in zombie news, is Amazon's game engine Lumberyard that they released. It's kind of cool, big deal in and of itself. They released like essentially a free to use game engine, which is kind of like the back end for what a lot of game developers have to use or build their game upon. And hidden in the legal, the fine print, I guess, in the contract, the terms of use, was a clause for, in the case of a zombie apocalypse. I guess they don't use that exact phrase, but they talk about...
Close enough, though.
Yeah, a viral infection spread by bites. The end result is that in the case of a zombie apocalypse, video game developers can work with the CDC to try and fix it.
Right.
Because
Come up with a plan.
That's the most likely course of events.
Right. And I think this is, as they mentioned in the article, I think this is just one in a long line of things to get people to actually think about emergency preparedness. So, but well done, Amazon.
Yeah, everybody likes an Easter egg.
Right. Then next up, there is just a little video that CNET put up, which was actually it was developed and made by Xbox, or the people at Xbox. And so basically they have one actor that and they start out with like the zombies in 1932, and they put the same actor through various makeup treatments, and then have little pop-up sort of notes about what kind of a zombie he is, and mode of transmission and all that kind of thing. I kind of liked watching how the makeup worked. I don't know how successful of a time-lapse video it was, and it definitely skips over a lot of different zombies, but I still thought it was pretty cool.
When you think about how much time goes into the average zombie makeup,
Right.
I mean, we're talking like I don't know if they were doing 4 or 5 hour makeup sessions with this guy or not, but it's a cool and it's cool given what we're reviewing today, because it's a mashup of those
Right.
those beauty and cosmetics videos that have been on the internet the last 12 months of like, this is what cosmetic trends have been over the last 50
Right.
years, and so here we see what zombie trends are. And of course, it's not just Xbox. These are our good buddies over there at Dying Light put this
Right.
video out, because the final zombie is one of theirs.
Is one of theirs, definitely. Yep.
But yeah, I like this a lot. I thought this was really cool, and those videos are always fun to watch. Honestly, even the ones about cosmetics, which I generally do not partake in, it's still interesting just to see. So I liked it.
Well, I liked especially because of the time lapse, just watching the differences in what they do, even with the base, and how the skin looks and all that stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. So I enjoyed that little piece. And then I'm going to leave the last one to you. And although I currently do own a pair of Brooks running shoes as we speak, at this moment in time.
Well played. I don't even know what make or brand my running shoes are, which makes me a bad consumer. Yeah, so in another CNET video, or it's an ad for Brooks, where they are, and I don't know, as I was watching this, HA, my brain was wanting to ask you, like, does this mean that the zombie genre has finally, made it or reached maximum saturation when running shoe ads using zombies?
I think that I was thinking the same thing, and I think we're there.
This is it. This is the top.
This might be it.
It is just so widespread. And actually, there was another thing that I didn't put in the news, the Marco Rubio interview. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did, and I also thought about putting it in, but also decided not to.
Just didn't want to get into the
Nope.
politics.
No.
But yeah, he is asked one question about zombies, and his answer was lightsaber as his preferred weapon, which I actually have to give him good points for, because that's a fantastic answer.
It is.
I didn't like a lot of his other answers, but it's a fantastic answer for zombie stuff.
At least on that, he wasn't going back to his talking points and repeating.
Anyways, but the Brooks commercial is cute. It takes zombies and defangs them and makes them into joggers.
Yep.
I don't really get
environmentally conscientious.
Yeah, snail friendly. I don't really get the headline from CNET, running shoes turn zombies into millennials.
Yeah, I didn't get that either, but okay.
But okay, they just seem, are millennials like friendly jogging people? Is that?
I don't know.
I always have sticks in my craw whenever people try to categorize entire generations of people. It's always
right.
It's always kind of dumb. But yeah, so it's a cute ad, and we'll have all these videos up in the show notes. A lot of videos this week, actually.
Right. So, are you ready?
Without further ado.
All right.
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Opening weekend was this weekend? Did it come out it came out on Friday?
Yeah.
So we are recording this on Happy Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
Happy Valentine's. And hopefully we'll get this up onto the internet within a few days of this date. But so, yeah, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Directed by Burr Steers, which seems like a fake name.
It does. Okay. It does.
Produced by lots of people, including, did you see the star? Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman. Well, she was originally supposed to be in this.
I did not know that.
Yep, she was originally supposed to be in this, and then they lost their original director. And then suddenly she found other projects that she had to be devoted to.
Well, I think she might have dodged a bullet, but okay.
David O. Russell, I think it was the original producer or the original director slated for this. So that was the original director. Although, and he's the person who did Silver Linings Playbook. And I think she was actually the one that really thought that they should make this into a film. Like, she read it and just said, hey, we need to do this. So there you are,
Well,
Natalie
I
Portman.
was surprised to see your name associated with this, but not to suggest that I think it was bad. I actually enjoyed I enjoyed this this film experience. I was in the theater with two other people on a weekday matinee. That's not that surprising, I guess, in a rural area, but it was not well attended, and its early box office numbers seem to suggest that is it's par for the course for right now, with only 5 million and change taken in on the first weekend. How was your theater in NYC?
I think my experience was probably a little different from yours. We went to a little tiny theater in Brooklyn that we don't normally go to, and it is pretty chilly here in Gotham, and so the theater just isn't able to deal with that. So everybody in the theater had their coats on. So that was interesting, and it was a kind of a small theater, but there was maybe 10 people in there. So
Still, for New York, that's like a pretty slim crowd.
it is, but given how freezing it was, like, I'm not really all that surprised.
Okay. All right, so
And
5.3 million.
there was also some very drunken people in that theater, so I don't know if they even intended to actually be there or not. So,
I see.
yes. So we shall see. Anyway, but I actually very much enjoyed this little experience. It was a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, I guess we should preface this also with how much of a Jane Austen fan are you?
You know what? I am a Jane Austen fan. I really like her writing. I think that at the time, I do not subscribe to Mark Twain's opinion of Jane Austen.
Which is?
Mark Twain had some pretty horrible things to say about Jane Austen. I think one of his quotes actually said something like hitting her in the head with a board until she was dead or something like that.
Well, that's just horrible.
He was really not a fan of hers. I think during the time that she was living in, the fact that she was doing what she did was such a anomaly, because she was this, and a lot of her stuff was actually published after she died. But I think her writing is really interesting. It's in line, like, if you really like that sort of weird, restrained British romance, it's all there for you. But Pride and Prejudice is one of my favorites. It's been made so many times, and there are a few little Easter eggs within this film, and like one specific scene that's just kind of like referencing that. Like, I think probably the most famous rendition of this particular book is the BBC miniseries with Colin Firth.
If I can just read you quickly the Mark Twain quote that you were referring to. Every
Sure.
time I read Pride and Prejudice, I want to dig her up and beat her over the skull with her own shin bone.
Not even a board, her own shin bone. There you go.
That's actually quite grisly and
Right.
zombie specific. So thank you, Mark Twain.
Yep. But I mean, I think there's a reason why her books have legs, and there's I don't think you'd have Downton Abbey without Jane Austen, honestly.
No, absolutely not. There's the parallels are undeniable.
Right. One of the things that I find so frustrating about it, but also interesting about it, is that she's writing a female character or female characters who are basically locked in this kind of social prison, if you will, and everything's dependent on whether they marry or not, or marry well. And in a lot of cases, her Elizabeth Bennet character is the one that's rebelling against all of that societal pressure, which is quite unusual at the time. So I got to give it to Jane. And I think that that's part of why it's such a popular, this particular story is so popular out of all of her writing.
Yeah, for myself, I was never a fan of Jane Austen, but I had to read it through the course of my education. Um, and so I never sought it out on my own, and I don't think I've revisited any of her books since a long time ago. But it resonates for the reasons that you're describing. It was obviously very progressive writing, as you've said, for the time and place where it was being written.
I also think she's a great character. She has a great character study in a lot of these characters. You get like, especially the really annoying characters. They're done quite well. And I think that comes across, especially in the Mr. Collins character in this particular rendition.
Based on I just to refresh my memory of like straight Austen, as in unaltered Austen.
Yes.
I
Yep.
watched parts of the Keira Knightley version from, I don't know, 2005, I think it was.
Okay.
And yeah, because this book is in public domain, which is basically the whole reason why the mashup was ever done.
Right.
They are ripping dialogue straight from the original and putting it into Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. And I hate the fact that they couldn't just take out the and put in a comma a lot
Right.
of times.
Right.
But okay, so a lot of the dialogue is just ripped straight from it, and so what you're ending up with is I don't know if it's less a mashup or more a mashup based on the fact that they're like trying to stay true to the original dialogue in many of the scenes. Obviously, some of them they are going off book so significantly that they have to introduce original dialogue. But I think
Yeah.
it's pretty clear when they're using the original stuff, just because it's good.
The only issue, so I actually didn't finish this book, The Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. And part of what annoyed me about it is that I kind of felt like if you were going to do this, you should actually mimic the style of the writer. And I don't feel like he did that.
Hmm.
I think he really did a very sloppy job of it and just kind of threw in his own little scenes. And he tried a little bit, but it's sort of like, if you're going to actually do this, you should really mimic the writer that you're trying to mash up with. So I was a little bit annoyed by that, and it just kind of, as my friend Derek said, it felt like a one-note joke that just wouldn't end.
Hmm.
But I actually think that they did a pretty good job at adapting this into a film more successfully than the book was actually than the book came across.
I thought the narration, the world building felt suitably period
Right.
to me. It was, if I have an overall, I have a few critiques of this film, but one of the first ones was that setting the setup, while it was like artistically interesting with the pop-up book and all that, that was cool.
Yep.
It was difficult to follow the geography of where things, like between London and in between, and where the Bennets live. I'm not really clear still what where Hertfordshire is in relation to London and the in between, and why, and where the zombies are, essentially, because it seems like the premise of the film sets up that London is this like impregnable, safe fortress city. The in between is also part of the defenses, but it's been overrun.
Right.
And then
I agree
what's
with you. They
everything
did
else
not
in
make
England?
any of this clear.
Yeah. So I was always kind of a little bit caught off guard, or like trying to figure out like, okay, so, and even in the map scenes, it helped a little bit, but they were really quick, and I don't know, maybe I was just slow. I couldn't quite figure out where everybody was, and where like the green zone was or
Right.
whatever, like it was tough. Wherever the Longbourn and Rosings and all these places were, though, it seemed like were mostly unmolested, but there were still zombies everywhere. Like anytime they left their house, there were zombies.
Right.
It was a little bit challenging. Another big critique I have for this film, and you've kind of touched on it, was, I guess it's the gender stuff. It's the social expectations of women. The fact that they've got these kick-ass Bennett girls who are almost, like super super awesome zombie killers, and they still shoehorn the societal expectations of the Jane Austen period on them, even though they're like essentially physically equal to the men.
Well, right, and there was to me there was the very odd thing where if they were to get married, they're supposed to stop fighting, which you would think if this was a reality in their time, that would actually be more of a benefit
Yeah, and especially
for.
since Collins is completely useless, and he wants, when he proposes to Liz or Elizabeth, he says, when we get married, you'd have to put away your sword and pick up pots and pans. But he has no capacity to defend himself. He's just a
Right.
parson.
Well, he's a little bit of a hanger on anyway at Rosanes, but that's the thing. It's like even Catherine de Bourgh, played by the wonderful Lena Headey, um, is she's still fighting. So why would Elizabeth stop? I don't know. That seemed kind of odd to me.
That's true. Yeah, another example of yeah, because I guess in the original, or certainly the Judi Dench version of Catherine de Bourgh in the film I saw with Keira Knightley, that woman is more down the line traditional. Like women should play piano and
Oh yeah,
yeah,
she's also more annoying. She's definitely not as badass. They definitely took some creative license with that particular character.
when you bring up the cast with Lena Headey, there was another fun Game of Thrones cameo, or not really a cameo, it was a major character, Mr. Bennett, played by none other than Tywin Lannister, Charles Dance, which I thought
Yep,
was pretty awesome.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and other people in the cast. Anybody else stand out to you?
Well, I mean, I think, Matt Smith as the wonderful Mr. Collins, of course.
Yeah, honestly, one of the best parts of
When
the film.
Agreed, agreed. In fact, he was a bit of a scene stealer, and I don't think, well, I think it was obvious that he was, but he pretty much took away any attention from anybody else whenever he was on in a scene, which was pretty good. And then in terms of the rest of the cast, I thought Lily James, who plays Elizabeth Bennet, was quite good.
Yeah,
And she's done Cinderella. She also was in Downton Abbey as well. But I thought she played a great Elizabeth Bennet.
also, another one who I didn't really even recognize till I looked more closely, was Jack Houston, or Houston, not sure how he says his name, or Huston, who was Richard Harrow from Boardwalk Empire, the guy with
Yeah.
half a face. And so he plays Lieutenant Wickham, or Mr. Wickham, in this version. And yeah, I just like that actor. So knowing that after the fact, I'm like, yeah, he was great, Mr. Wickham. Not that honestly, it was fine. I don't know that there was that much range because they were kind of on rails. A lot of this film felt a little bit like it was on rails, and
Hmm.
that's some of the criticism I've been seeing too. Is that it's a series of foregone conclusions.
Right. So one of the other sort of critiques, and again, overall, I like different parts of this. I thought that it was pretty well done, given what it was, and definitely had some bright spots. But the whole piece, the film opens up with Mr. Darcy, and I feel like this whole story is actually about Elizabeth Bennet. So I feel like it really should have been from the get go about her,
I see.
and it shouldn't have started out in that way. But that's fine. And then the other piece is that they definitely went overboard with the weird flowery words of romance between her and Mr. Darcy, and something about persuasion and Prime Prejudice and all of Jane Austen's novels is that these characters are just so restrained. They never actually use the word love. It's more, I ardently admire you.
Right.
Although they did pull some Matt Smith's Mr. Collins, some of his quotes, more icky quotes, are directly from the book, like his violence of affection or something like that, or violence of his feelings.
Yeah.
But I just felt like they went a little bit overboard with Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy, which to me, for these characters, it just negates the whole idea of their relationship. Like it's all about what isn't said between them as opposed to what actually gets said.
Yeah, and yet in this version, it's pretty clear that Darcy's got the hots for her from the first time
Right.
they've met. I mean, I guess it is from her perspective too, mostly in body language. But some of the dialogue, the way they had to intersperse like the Austin stuff with the zombie world stuff, like oh you studied in China, not Japan, and
Well, that
uh,
was actually funny because it
yeah,
shows like a classist thing. So obviously the Bennett ladies are from a slightly lower class according to regular society, which I thought was kind of an interesting twist.
yeah, and the scene where Darcy is describing what the perfect woman, or like what a comprehensive woman is, and how she's supposed to be good at, a whole laundry list of things like um, what female arts and fighting,
Well, the
which
first
I
half
thought
is
was,
pulled directly from the
yeah,
book.
obviously, I'm pretty sure fighting did not make it into the
No,
book,
no, no.
and yeah, so there were times when it was woven well together, and I like that. The mechanic of the aristocrat zombies, or the zombies who didn't eat meat, human meat,
Kind of weak.
fell flat to me
Yeah.
because it was never made clear what that was supposed to do. I mean, these are people who were introduced to her by Wickham, who it's revealed later is not a good guy. So what was his goal there, and why was he taken to Catherine de Bourgh, which also never happened, by the way, in the book.
No, of course not. And um, yeah, that whole piece was very strange to me. I felt like that whole twist could have been done very differently without even getting into that weird plot line. It felt very much like, especially given the very ending scene or the post credit scene, that
Yeah.
they're trying to set it up for a sequel, which is like, guys, no, don't do it. But yeah, I agree with you. And I also felt like, given that this whole film is called Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, the zombies could have been a little bit better done. But
What do you mean by that?
like, I just felt like their makeup was very repetitive. There's a lot of like shadows and kind of innuendo in terms of what they look like. There was some good makeup, but I just felt overall it just didn't really do too much for me. Like, they kind of did the same, pretty much what the cover of the book is. You just show a lot of grinning skull type stuff. Nothing too interesting. And it just felt, to me, it fell a little bit flat.
Yeah, it was kind of cartoony. Part of the reason for that, I think, is because this was a PG-13
Right.
film. But I thought there were a couple of standout zombie effects. They were definitely CGI and not practical effects, but I thought that they were pretty good. Like in the pre-credits, the pre-open credits scene with the young woman who looks up and half her face is missing. There's a nasty
Yeah, that was gross.
accent to it, but it looked pretty damn good.
Yeah, that was gross. With the mucus out of her nose and all.
Yeah, yeah, some of the shivers. Um, but yeah, those effects were pretty good. There weren't many scares
Right.
because honestly, the zombies they could talk. Something, when they wanted to, I guess some of them were talking. It was a bit of a genre straddler
Right.
in a couple of ways there.
I did very much like, though, the take that they had on Jane, the older sister, when she goes to visit Mr. Bingley,
Right.
and she gets injured, and there's the whole fear that she's been bitten. So that was
Yeah.
kind of a cool thing. In the book, she gets a fever and just ends up like staying there for a while, which is how they just put Elizabeth and Darcy in the same room together.
Right.
But in this, it was kind of it was a nice little twist where actually Darcy is worried about her infecting the entire household.
And so is the whole audience. I mean, because the
Right.
scene, yeah, this is an interesting part of the original story where her mother is this conniving woman who sends her there in a rainstorm on a horse on purpose so that she
Hoping
would,
that she gets sick.
or at least that she would have to stay there overnight. But ultimately, like, she gets sick. So in the scene in the zombie version, she kills one and then is faced with a mother and baby zombie, and she's like, "Oh no!" And you don't see the end of the scene. So when she shows up, like, and collapses at Bingley's house, you're not really sure. And so yeah, as you said, that was a really cool twist. Of course, if you're familiar with the story, you know that she can't die in the first act of the
Mm.
book or of the movie. So yeah, it's tough. But I think given the constrictions of what they were doing, That was a cool move.
Right, and I also liked her relationship with Bingley, he is kind of like exactly how they show him in this film, which is sort of like he's this sort of nice guy, gentleman,
Hmm.
just like very amiable, but just really not a ton of personality. He's just like a good natured fellow. So I like the twist that they have like Jane just saving his ass
Yeah, because he's getting
in the
killed by
end,
his own
and
scarf.
also Elizabeth saving his ass because he's like, oh, let's wait for Mr. Darcy, and that's kind of like I thought that was very true to his actual character in the original book, which was kind of funny.
How did you like Darcy?
I have to admit to you, I found him. I didn't think he was quite up to snuff, quite honestly. And I think it's because he's kind of weird looking. Which I know I hate to say that, but there was just something about it that I didn't fully buy into this rendition of Darcy. Um, but hey, you know what? To each his own, and I think that he and Lily James had good chemistry. So I guess that's all right. I just there was something about this actor that just didn't quite sit right with me.
I, not being an expert on this topic, so he was played by Sam Riley,
Right.
an English actor and singer.
Yep.
He has, and I think Darcy's supposed to just kind of be this like dark, brooding, intense dude, and I think
He
he definitely has that going for him.
he does. It was something that I don't know. I think probably one of the best scenes is where he actually professes his love, the first marriage proposal, and that's like a true Darcy scene where he's basically insulting her all over the place.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And they end up
asking for
having
he's like
they
asking
end
for
up
her
having an
hand.
awesome fight. You know,
Right. Like, so that was kind of well within that. I just didn't fully buy him as Darcy for a lot of the other stuff. Although, as I mentioned or alluded to before, they did have that great scene where he jumps into the water in his white shirt, which was directly pulled from the BBC miniseries with Colin Firth. So,
no Darcy's ever going to live up to Colin Firth. As
I
I
guess
say
that's
this,
true.
I say
I
this
would.
based on the opinion of my wife.
That is probably true. I was really hoping that we would see a Colin Firth cameo or Jennifer Eel cameo, but we did not.
I was kind of hoping we'd see a Renee Zellweger cameo.
That would be awesome too.
So this film is getting, 1 week in, it's getting a 46% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. Clearly
Yeah,
not awesome.
it's not doing all that well, but I feel
It's
like it's a bit unfair.
How's that unfair?
That rating? I think given the genre it's in, I think this is just supposed to be good fun. And I did think it was enjoyable and kind of silly. Sure, it had pieces that you could improve upon, but I had fun watching it, and I, you know, despite the freezing theater and despite the fact that I'm under the weather, I thought some of the references were kind of fun, even if a couple of the points fell flat. But I just thought that this was better than a lot of other films of this genre that I've seen.
So my comparison that I keep drawing to with this film is Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter,
Mm.
which came out. I was surprised that it came out before this, honestly. And that movie came out, has a 35% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It was not awesome, but it was, again, just like a good romp, good fun kind of movie, kind of story. And that film had a $16 million opening weekend, whereas this one had a $5.3 million opening weekend. That film cost $60 million to make. This one only cost 28.
Yeah.
So this one doesn't
Well,
have
and
as far to go.
that is part of why the original director I think backed out was like arguments over the budget.
Okay.
So maybe that I don't know. But I
Well, I
so
think they
what
can
did so what did
definitely
you
make up that budget based on, even with a $5.5 million opening weekend. I think they can definitely still get there.
right.
Taken aside from a genre combining film, and I guess it's really difficult to do that. I had fun. I watched this movie. I liked it for what it was. I have a fairly low standard, I guess. Um, and like with my experience being unique, of course, as all of ours are, I've read some Austen, I've seen some Austen adaptations, and I enjoyed the quality of her work interspersed with a genre that I enjoy. And so I guess there were few chances that I wasn't going to enjoy parts of this.
All right, I'll take that.
I also don't think there should be a sequel. I think that there were giant, not giant problems with this, but there were elements of this movie that were confusing. But I liked the cast. I thought they were all good and quality, and like the attractive, dapper English people that they needed to be. I like the combination of the bodices and the big frilly dresses with like knives strapped to their legs, and pistols hidden in places under their frocks. At the same time, as I was thinking that, I'm like, why weren't they all just wearing the weird uh,
Battle
fighting
outfits.
fighting pants that she puts on for the third act? Yeah,
Yeah, agreed.
but okay, I'll take it because they're trying to make this amalgam of the two things. So I put aside my incredulity for that, like just because of what they were trying to do.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, in the bright spots that there were, and there were a lot of bright spots. I feel like, yeah, I agree with you. Definitely should not do a sequel to this. I think that would just be painful and horrible. Um, but I think for what it is, it's good fun. I don't feel like it is the worst of these mashups I've seen, although I see a lot of the reviewers disagree. So maybe we'll see this rating change a little bit, and I would guess that this probably does a little bit better once it hits streaming.
You know what I wouldn't mind paying to see would be it wouldn't be a whole movie, but a scene at least where Rosings comes under attack. We get to see the Blackguard do something useful and fight some zombies. That cool raising and lowering staircase that gets
Yeah,
into the
that's
Rosings
awesome.
Hall is super cool. I'd like to see some combat going on in like a Georgian palace.
Yeah, that's totally, and I love all those ideas. Like that's what makes this a lot of fun, and I feel like some of that got wasted.
Yeah, and some of the
Um,
set dressing, like the giant wall of wheels, of metal wheels,
yep,
so cool looking. Never got to see it in action, which is a big bummer.
right. So anyway, I still I think it's kind of fun. I'd go for it if I were you.
Yeah,
That's my sum up of my review.
yeah, go for it. Okay.
But don't take it too seriously. I think that's
You-
the gist.
I think anybody going into this with a serious mindset is seriously. Anyone going into this with a serious mindset is missing the point of like look at the title. So
Agreed,
yeah,
agreed.
what are we gonna do next, AJ?
I think we're going to continue with our review of season 4 of The Walking Dead.
You are so correct. We're gonna be doing episodes 3 and 4 of that season, and so everybody should tune in again next time when we get back to Rick and the gang.
Yep. So until next time, watch yourself some Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. And
Leave,
ciao.
and leave us a review on iTunes, or you can get in touch with us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, reanimatedpcast on Twitter, and our show is hosted on a Squarespace page, you might be surprised to hear, at reanimatedpodcast.com. So thank you very much and goodbye. I said goodbye, madam.